All right. Hey, everybody. It's Nathaniel Avila reporting from Dallas County. And who am I here with today?
Hey, it's Hanyu. Welcome, guys.
Hello. So, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about the Kaspar Hauser.
Right. Do you know anything about this guy?
Oh, a little here, a little there, but not like fully know about it.
Oh, okay.
Just that he's like German, 1800s, you know, just the basics.
Yep. So this guy was a German youth who claimed to have grown up in total isolation of a darkened cell. So let's talk about it. So our story begins on May 26th, 1828, when a teenage boy appeared on the streets of Nuremberg, and he carried a letter with him addressed to the captain of the 4th Squadron of the 6th Cavalry Regiment. And Captain von, whose name is Captain von Wessening, and its heading read, "From the Bavarian Order, this place is unnamed, 1828." So, there's that. So the anonymous author said that the boy was given into his custody with as an infant on October 7th, 1812, and that he instructed him in reading, writing, and the Christian religion, but never let him take a single step outside of my house. That's a quote. So the letter read that the boy would now like to be a cavalryman as his father was, and invited the captain either to take him in or to hang him, which I think is a bit drastic.
Yes, that is.
So yeah, like, what do you think about this entire situation? This guy, this kid, is just walking around the city of Nuremberg, and no one knows what is up with him.
I think it's kind of interesting. I mean, never to set foot outside your home, and then he finally did one day. Kind of sad.
Yeah. So yeah, there was another short letter enclosed purporting to be from his mother to his prior caretaker, and it stated that his name was Kaspar, and that he was born on April 30th, 1812, and that his father, a cavalryman in the 6th Regiment, was dead. In fact, his this letter was found to have been written by the same hand and was and as the it was same hand as the other one, and whose line "he writes my handwriting exactly as I do" led later analysis to assume that Kaspar Hauser himself wrote both of them. So what do you think about that?
Ooh, that's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That he could possibly have written that.
Yeah,
What was the age that he was found at?
yeah, he was, well, it said he was born in 1812 and he was found in 1828, so he was 16.
I mean, he's grown up enough that he can write his own stuff.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think about, do you think he really was raised in isolation and all this, or did he just fake it?
Um, I mean, there's plenty of other stories and things and TV shows that we've seen that happens about trying to keep people enclosed.
Yeah, but I mean, this whole thing that he most likely wrote both letters definitely kind of calls it into question.
Well, I mean, if you've escaped from somewhere that you shouldn't have left from, I would write my own letter also so
Okay.
that, hey, they can't trace it back to whoever it was that where I was at because that's a bad place.
That's a bad place, and you don't want anything to do with that place?
Especially if you escape.
Okay. So yeah, so a shoemaker named Weichmann took the boy into the house of Captain von Wessening, where he would repeat only the words, "I want to be a cavalryman as my father was," and "horse, horse." Further demands elicited only tears or the obstinate proclamation of "don't know." He was taken to a police station where he would write a name, Kaspar Hauser. So he showed that he was familiar with money, could say some prayers, and read a little, but he answered few questions and his vocabulary appeared to be rather limited. Because he provided no account of himself, he was imprisoned as a vagabond. So yeah, so they just sent him to jail. What do you think about that?
I mean, it sounds kind of right. If you have no identification, are you really who you say you are? Where'd you come from? You're just wondering. You're a troublemaker before we think you're not a troublemaker yet.
So they just threw him into the tin can. They just threw him in there.
Well, to be honest, some places were guilty until proven innocent. So,
Okay.
I mean,
So let's find out. So he spent the following 2 months in Lugensland Tower in Nuremberg Castle in the care of a jailer named Andreas Heitel. Despite what many later accounts would say, he was in good physical condition and could walk well. For example, he climbed over 90 steps to his room, and he was of a healthy facial complexion, and approximately 16 years old, but appeared to be intellectually impaired. So Mayor Binder, however, claimed that the boy had an excellent memory and was learning quickly. Various curious people visited him to his apparent delight, and he refused all food except bread and water. So yeah, that's what he was doing. So yeah, so now let's get into the account of what Hauser said his life was before he was found in Nuremberg. You ready to hear it?
yep.
All right. So at first, it was assumed that Hauser was a half wild child from the forests. So during the course of many conversations with Mayor Binder, Hauser told a different version of his past life, which he later wrote down in more detail. Now, according to the story, Hauser had as long as he could to remember, spent his life in solitary confinement in a darkened cell. So he gave the cell's dimensions as approximately 2 meters long, 1 meter wide, and 1.5 high, with only a straw bed to sleep on, and for toys, 2 horses and a dog carved out of wood. So yeah. So let's look at how much that is in American. So that's about 3 feet and 3 inches.
Interesting.
Yep. So so his cell was like 3 feet 3 feet wide, and how much long? 3 feet wide and 6 feet long. So yeah, that's how it was. And it was how high was the ceiling? It was about around 5 feet. So it was pretty small. So what do you think?
Yes, that is very small.
So what do you
Just
think?
enough for a small bed.
Yeah?
That's it. Maybe a pail for restroom use.
Yeah. So what do you think? Do you think he actually did have to go through this?
I believe so.
Oh, okay. Well, Hauser claimed that he found rye bread and water next to his bed each morning. At times, the water would taste bitter, and drinking it would cause him to sleep more deeply than usual. So the implication here was that he was drugged.
He was drugged!
Yeah. So on such occasions, upon awakening, his straw had been changed and his hair and nails cut. So Hauser claimed that the first human being he had ever met was a man who visited him not long before his release, and the man took great care not to reveal his face to him. So this man taught him to write his own name by lending his hand. So after learning to stand and walk, Hauser was brought to Nuremberg. The stranger allegedly taught him to say the phrase, "I want to be a cavalryman as my father was," in an old Bavarian dialect. But Hauser claimed that he did not understand what the words meant. So this tale aroused great curiosity and made Hauser an object of international attention. Rumors arose that he was of princely parentage, possibly of Baden origin, which is a noble family in Germany. But there were also allegations that he was an imposter. So what do you think? Was he an imposter?
I mean, if you've not been taught anything, how would you even know in the first place? And it's not like they had DNA tests or anything like that. Especially if the family was originally wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
How can you tell he was part of the family if there's no one you can test it on?
Yeah. Oh, we'll get into what the scientists say, because they actually did do DNA tests on this guy.
Of course the scientists did.
Yeah. So Paul Johann Anselm Ritter von Feuerbach, president of the Bavarian Court of Appeals, began to investigate the case. Hauser was formally adopted by the town of Nuremberg, and money was donated for his upkeep and education. He was given into the care of Friedrich Dahmer, a schoolmaster and speculative philosopher who taught him various subjects and who thereby discovered his talent of drawing. He appeared to flourish in this environment. Dahmer also subjected him to homeopathy and magnetic experiments. So homeopathy is a pseudoscientific system of alternative medicine. So that's what that is. So as Feuerbach told the story, when Professor Dahmer held the North Pole of a magnet towards him, Kaspar put his hand into the pit of his stomach and, drawing his waistcoat in an outward direction, said that it threw him thus, and that a current of air seemed to proceed from him. So the South Pole affected him less powerfully and said that it blew upon him. So yeah, that whole thing was going on. But on October 17th, 1829, Hauser was found in the cellar of Dahmer's house bleeding from a newly cut wound on the forehead. Now he asserted that while sitting on the privy, he had been attacked and hurt by a hooded man who also threatened him with the words, "You still have to die ere you leave the city of Nuremberg." Hauser related that he recognized the speaker as the man who had brought him to Nuremberg. Oh my gosh. Now, as was obvious... In the same place? He attacked him when he was on the toilet. So as was obvious from his blood trail, Hauser had first fled to the first floor where his room was, but then, rather than moving on to find his caretakers, had gone downstairs and climbed through a trap door into the cellar. Alarmed officials called for a police escort and transferred him to the care of Johann Bieberbach, a municipal authority. The alleged attack on Hauser also fueled rumors as his possible ancestry from Hungary, England, or the House of Baden. So, what do you think? What do you think about this whole issue that he was allegedly attacked? Do you think that fuels that he was of noble birth?
It's a possibility. Again, how are we supposed to know yet? Unless tests are done.
Yep, and we will get to those tests very soon. So, doubters of Hauser's story are the opinion that he had self-inflicted the wound with a razor, which he then took back to his room before going to the cellar. he might have done so to arouse pity and thus escape childing for a recent quarrel with Dahmer, who had become to believe that the boy had a tendency to lie. So, what do you think? Does that change your opinion at all?
No,
What? How?
people lie to protect themselves.
So, but you don't think it was lying about being attacked with the razor?
Maybe, maybe not.
Okay. So now we're going to go fast forward to April 3rd, 1830. A pistol shot off in Hauser's room at Bieberbach's house. His escort hurriedly entered the room and found him bleeding from a wound from the right side of his head. Hauser soon revived and stated that he climbed on a chair to get some books. The chair had fallen, and then, while trying to find a handhold, he had by mistake torn down the pistol hanging from the wall that caused the shot to go off. There are some doubts, however, doubts whether the superficial wound was actually caused by the shot. Some authors associate the incidents with a preceding quarrel in which, again, Hauser had been reproached for lying. Whatever the case, the occurrence led the municipal authorities to come to another decision on Hauser, whose initially good relationship with the Bieberbach family had soured. So on May 1830, he was transferred to the house of Baron von Tucher. The Baron would also later complain that Hauser's exorbitant vanity and lies. So Mrs. Bieberbach commented on his horrendous mendacity and art of dissimulation, and called him full of vanity and spite. So what do you think about all this? So he seems to not be very liked by anyone.
Just interesting so far.
Yeah. So yeah, like he's being like jumped around from place to place to place. First to Dahmer, and then he ended up at Bieberbach's, and then now he's being sent to this Von Tucher guy. So they're just like passing him around all of course of throughout Nuremberg, and nobody seems to like him. So yeah, let's.
He brings evil spirits everywhere that he goes. He's no longer welcome. Bad luck follows him wherever he goes.
Oh no. So do you think it's something about him that he's just being like a negative thing? Like
It's
he's
a
like
possibility.
he's just carrying negative energy that's causing people to not like him.
Yeah, it's quite a possibility.
Yeah. So yeah.
Negative energies, negative spirits that want to protect him or want to hurt him.
Okay. Well, he was apparently he was attacked with a razor and then a gun, or well, the gun was an accident, but he said it was an accident. So now the British are here. So the British nobleman Lord Stanhope took interest in Hauser and gained custody of him in late 1831. So he spent a great deal of money attempting to clarify Hauser's origin. In particular, he paid for 2 visits to Hungary, hoping to jog the boy's memory. As Hauser seemed to remember some Hungarian words and had once declared that the Hungarian Countess Matheny was his mother. So Hauser failed to recognize any buildings or monuments in Hungary. A Hungarian nobleman who had met Hauser later told Stanhope that he and his son had a good laugh, and they recollected the strange boy and his histrionic behavior. Histrionic behavior, that is. So basically it means like it's basically acting out. That's what histrionic means. So Stanhope later wrote that the complete failure of these inquiries led him to doubt Hauser's credibility. So what do you think? Do you think that that it cast a doubt on his credibility?
I mean, it's a possibility.
Yeah. So yeah, it looks like so he took him to Hungary and nothing seems to be doing anything. So in December 1831, he transferred Hauser to Ansbach to take care of a schoolmaster to the care of the schoolmaster named Johann Georg Mayer. And on January 1832, Stanhope left Hauser for good. So Stanhope continued to pay for Hauser's living expenses, but never made good on his promise that he would take him to England. So after Hauser's death, Stanhope published a book in which he presented all known evidence against Hauser, taking it as his duty openly to confess that I had been deceived. So followers of Hauser suspect Stanhope of ulterior motives and connections to the House of Baden, but academic historiography defends him as a philanthropist, a pious man, and a seeker of truth. So now this Stanhope guy is convinced that Hauser is a fraud. So what do you think?
It's a possibility or not. It's
Yeah.
lying is so easy, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are some people who say that oh, he's just trying to cover it up. Stanhope's trying to cover it up, but it doesn't really sound like he is. Though I don't think it wasn't a really nice thing to be like, okay, I'm done with you, and just send him off to this mayor guy. So yeah, so let's see what happened after that. So the schoolmaster Mayer, a strict and pedantic man, disliked Hauser's excuses and apparent lies. So here's another guy that doesn't seem to really like Hauser very much. So their relations was thus strained. In late 1832, Hauser was employed as a copyist at the local law office. Still hoping that Stanhope would take him to England, Hauser was dissatisfied with his situation, which deteriorated further when his patron, Anselm von Feuerbach, died in May 1833. So this was a grievous loss to him. So other authors point out that Feuerbach, by the end of his life, had lost faith in Hauser. So it's another guy. It's like everybody doesn't seem to be like buying his thing anymore. So
Nope.
So he had written a note to be found in his legacy, which read, "Kaspar Hauser is a smart, scheming codger, a rogue and a good-for-nothing that ought to be killed." Wow, he hates him. And this guy was his best friend? Man.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, you must really stink, Hauser. You must be garbage if if this many people hate you. So, however, there is no indication that Feuerbach, already seriously ill, let Hauser feel this change of opinion, which I don't think he most likely did. So on December 9th, 1833, Hauser had a serious argument with Mayer. Lord Stanhope was expected to visit Ansbach at Christmas, and Mayer stated that he did not know how he would face him. So there's that. So 5 days later, December 14th, 1833, Hauser came home with a deep wound in his left breast. By his account, he had been lured to the Asbach court garden, where a stranger stabbed him while giving him a bag. So when policeman Herline searched the court garden, he found a small violet purse containing a pencil note in mirror writing. So the message read in German, "Hauser will never be able to tell you quite precisely how I look from where I am. To save Hauser the effort, I want to tell you myself where I come and then blank. I come from blank, the Bavarian border blank on the river blank. I will even tell you my name, MLO." That's not really telling him his name, just the initials. But yeah. And when I say blank, he literally just like put just dashes on the note. Like it wasn't like it was because he was just ineligible. He just literally put dashes on where it was. So this doesn't really sound very helpful. I mean, this guy was like, "Hey, I'll tell you everything," and then just not. So, what do you think about this? So, he was attacked again. Oh, also Hauser died. He was killed from the wound on December 17th, 1833. So that's how he died. So what do you think about this? So he was killed. Why do you think he was killed?
He probably, even though he didn't know much, he probably was evidence of, some royal family that was trying to be put out of its misery.
No. So you're still going with the that he was of noble birth, that he was from some kind of rich family.
Yeah, those are mostly likely to be taken.
Okay. However, there are inconsistencies in Hauser's account, which led the Osbach Court of Inquiry to suspect that he stabbed himself, and then invented a tale about being attacked. The note on the purse that was found in the court garden contained a spelling error and a grammatical error, both of which were typical for Hauser, who, on his deathbed, muttered incoherently about writing with pencil. Although Hauser was eager that the purse be found, he did not ask for its contents. Kinda suspicious. The boat itself was folded into a specific triangular form, in a way in which Hauser would fold his letters. According to Mrs. Mayer, forensic examiners agreed that the wound might indeed be self-inflicted. Now, many authors believe that he had wounded himself in a bid to revive public interest in his story and to persuade Stanhope to fulfill his promise to take him to England, and that he had injured himself more deeply than planned. So, what do you think? Do you think he just did it to himself?
He might have.
He might have. But
it's a possibility.
Yeah. I'm kind of more leaning that he kind of just made everything up. Because it sounds like he made everything up.
I mean, that is one opinion of possibility.
Yeah. So Hauser was buried at the city cemetery in Osbach, where his headstone reads, in Latin, "Here lies Kaspar Hauser, riddle of his time, his birth was unknown, his death mysterious, 1833. A monument to him was later erected in the court garden, which reads, "Here lies a mysterious one who was killed in a mysterious manner." So yeah, there goes that. So that's the end of Kaspar Hauser's life. So what do you think about his entire life going on?
Seems like a lots of ups and downs and not knowing who you were. Wanting to trust these new people that you're finally getting to see, and then them all slowly starting to hate you over nothing of your own control.
Oh, okay. So you think that people started to hate him not because he was a bad person, it was just because they just didn't want to deal with him.
I think there was other circumstances, maybe whispering in the background. Someone else was coming about and saying awful things about him.
Oh, okay.
And it just went further than it needed to be, and things happened.
Yeah, definitely. So do you think that he was actually killed by someone, maybe who was representative of the royal family, of any royal family?
I don't think he was killed by someone else's royal family. I think he was killed by someone from his own royal or underling from the royal family who wanted to take out his royal family. Okay. Almost, the whole Anastasia and Rasputin kind of thing, just someone totally different.
Okay.
Where they survived and was taken, but then they were found, but they don't know anything because they were too young to understand that they were royalty.
Okay.
But because he has the blood, he must die for things to happen.
Yeah. I don't know how true that Anastasia thing is, though. But I do like the movie. And also, we never find out who this MLO guy is. So that could be anyone.
True, that could be anyone.
So you ready to hear what the scientists have to say?
Uh, yes, let's hear what the scientists have to say.
Yeah. So Dr. Heidenreich, a physician present at the autopsy, claimed that the brain of Kaspar Hauser was notable for a small cortical size and its few non-distinct cortical agiri. What is that? Oh, it's a ridge in the cerebral cortex. And it, yeah. So yeah, that's what that is. So indicative to some that he suffered from cortical atrophy, or as G. Hess argued, from epilepsy. So he might have had epilepsy. So Heidenreich may have been influenced by his phrenological ideas when examining Hauser's brain. Dr. Albert, who conducted the autopsy and wrote the official report, found no anomalies in Hauser's brain. So that might not have, he might have just not have done it right. Now in 1928, medical studies supported the view that Hauser had self-inflicted the wound and accidentally stabbed himself too deeply. A 2005 forensic analysis argued that it seems unlikely that the stab to the chest was inflicted exclusively for the purpose of self-damage, but both a suicidal stab and a homicidal act cannot definitely be ruled out. So their results were who knows. So let's go into Hauser's various accounts of the story of his incarceration, which include several contradictions. So in 1970, psychiatrist Carl Leonard stated that if he had been living since childhood under the conditions he describes, he would not have developed beyond the conditions of, he says idiot, but I think it's like in a more a mean way. So indeed, he would have not have remained alive long. So his tale is so full of absurdities that it is astonishing that it was ever believed and is even today still believed by many people. So yeah, that's what this guy says. What do you take about his take on the whole Kaspar Hauser situation?
I mean, it's an interesting take on it.
Yeah, his thing was that he couldn't have Hauser could not have who could not have lived to the age of 16 if he really was living under those conditions, and that he was like, wow, no, why would this ever have been believed in the first place? It's so ridiculous.
Well, if by chance he was being drugged to go into a deeper sleep, and he wakes up with his nails, bed changed, haircut, it's also quite possible for, in that time frame, even though he was only technically eating bread and water, to find a way, because it's not unheard of to just shove liquids or food into a sleeping person's mouth, pretend to chew it like a bird, and have it go down someone's gullet.
Okay. So let's explore this whole thing that he might be from royalty. So according to contemporary rumors, probably current as early as 1829, Kaspar Hauser was in fact the hereditary prince of Baden, who was born on September 29th, 1812. According to history, the prince died on October 16th, 1812, and it was alleged that he had been switched with a dying infant only to subsequently surface 16 years later as Hauser. In that case, Hauser's parents would have been Charles, the Grand Duke of Baden, and Stephanie de Beauharnais, cousin by marriage and adopted daughter of Napoleon. So as Charles had no surviving male progeny, his successor was his uncle, Louis, who would become Ludwig the First, who later succeeded by his half brother Leopold. So Leopold's mother, the Countess of Hochberg, was the alleged culprit for the plot. So the Countess was supposed to have disguised herself as a ghost, known as the White Lady, when kidnapping the prince. Her motive evidently would have been the succession for her sons. Following Hauser's death, it was further claimed that he was murdered, again to hide his supposed true identity. So, what do you think about that? Do you think it was that?
Yes. I mean, if she wants her son in line for anything, I wouldn't put it past anyone.
Mm-hmm. So in 1876, Otto Mittelstadt presented evidence against this theory in the form of official documents concerning the prince's emergency baptism, autopsy, and burial. In his Historical Mysteries, Andrew Lang summarizes the results. Now, this is what he says. It is true that the Grand Duchess was too ill to be permitted to see her dead baby in 1812, but the baby's father, grandfather, and aunt, with the 10 court physicians, the nurses and others must have seen it in death, and it is too absurd to suppose, on no authority, that they were all parties to the White Lady's plot. So, historian Fritz Trautz went so far as to write that, this is what he says, the silly fairy tale, which to this day moves many pens and was found much belief, was fully disproved in Otto Mittelstadt's book. So, Letters to the Grand Duke's Mother, published in 1951, gave detailed accounts of the child's birth, illness, and death, which would disprove the theory of switched babies. So there we go. So that is 100% disproven. We know that Hauser is not a member of the House of Baden, and he is not of noble birth. So we know that for a fact. What do you think?
Well, that's kind of sad.
Yeah.
But, I mean...
You mean what?
I mean, it happens sometimes. You wish you were royalty and it never happens.
Oh, yeah. I've seen many a Hallmark movie. So, in November 1996, the German magazine Der Spiegel reported an attempt to genetically match a blood sample from underwear thought to have been Hauser's. This analysis was made in laboratories of Forensic Science Service in Birmingham and in the LMU Institute of Legal Medicine at the University of Munich. Comparisons with descendants of the princely family proved that the blood examined could not have come from a hereditary prince of Baden. In 2002, the Institute for Forensic Medicine at the University of Munster analyzed hair and body cells from locks of hair and items of clothing that also belonged to Kaspar Hauser. The analysis took look from the items used in the test 6 different DNA samples, all of which turned out to be identical. All, however, differed substantially from the blood sample examined in 1996. So the authenticity of which was therefore questioned. So, very interesting. So the new DNA samples were compared to the DNA segment from Astrid von Menninger, a descendant in the female line of Stephanie de Beauharnais. So the sequences were not identical, but the deviation observed is not large enough to exclude a relationship as the difference could be caused by a mutation. So the mitochondrial DNA, which was examined, is passed only through the female line and thus cannot change except through mutation. So on the other hand, the relatively high similarity by no means proves the alleged relationship, as the Hauser samples showed a pattern amongst the German population. So the House of Baden does not allow any medical examination of the remains of Stephanie de Beauharnais or of the child that was buried as her son in the family vault at the Pforzheimer Schlosskirche, which I think means family city cemetery. So yeah, there's that. So they're saying that the DNA says that their DNA does not disprove that he's not a Baden, not a member of the House of Baden. So the DNA says it's still kind of up in the air, but there's all that historical documentation that does point to it being not true. So that's pretty much it. That's the end of Kaspar Hauser. So Kaspar Hauser actually fits into the contemporary European image of the wolf child, and despite the fact that he most certainly was not one, and he became possibly the best known example of the genre. As a result, the story inspired numerous works, and I can go on about the numerous things that he inspired. Like he inspired The Confidence Man by Herman Melville, and he inspired the French poet Paul Verlaine to write the poem Gaspard Hauser Chant, and all these different stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much the end of Kaspar Hauser. That's his entire story. What do you think about this whole thing?
It's a very interesting story
Mm-hmm.
to go by anyway.
Yeah.
To be locked up in a room pretty much most of your life and then get taken by a man that you don't even know who it is away.
Yeah.
And then all this bad karma follows you wherever you go, which, I mean, if the first scientist was true and he did have, what was it, epilepsy?
Epilepsy.
Yeah, that would kind of explain the razor or something in the bathroom, because if you do it, you involuntarily kind of go out.
Yeah. So you think that might be how he got those wounds?
Yeah.
Nah.
It's shaking and things, and sometimes you remember and sometimes you don't. A lot of things weren't explained in those time frames because they didn't know exactly what it was.
Right. So yeah, are you still of the mindset that this guy is of noble birth, and then he maybe he's not of the House of Baden, but he might be of another house, royal noble family? What do you think?
That's a possibility.
Yeah. So do you think he actually made everything up? What's your final thoughts on that?
I think someone did tell him to say such things because he didn't have much knowledge and was just told and heard the first time another human. I mean, people are trustworthy until they understand non-trust.
All right. I mean, yeah. So that's the story of Kaspar Hauser. I'm kind of more on the on the side that he made everything up, because that seems to be where all the evidence points to. But but who knows? We may never know, because this was over 200 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's the story of Kaspar Hauser. That was really a really interesting story. And yeah, I've been Nathaniel Avila.
And I'm Hanyu.
Hello. And we will talk to you guys next time. Bye.
Next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to a Vision podcast, home of wacky talkies, The Kingdom, Evil Exists, and many more.